Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well, because it's time to buckle in for a pretty big and I think significant conversation about the state of hip hop with respect to Kendrick Lamar's Watch the Party Die, just now being over 1 year old. Now, for those of you who might need a bit of a refresher, this track was kind of like a loose extra dropped around the time when Kendrick was finishing off his beef with Drake. And even though the song doesn't obviously directly deal in his feud with Champagne Papi, it does kind of guide the listener into an understanding that Kendrick's feud with him has so much more to do with the genre as a whole than it does just one single man. And across the entirety of this track, Kendrick voices many different concerns about hip hop culture, the state of the genre, talking about artists not relaying knowledge and information, significant information or perspective to their young listeners. And since the song came out, many rap fans have kind of observed some pretty massive changes within the genre and its culture itself. Now, this is obviously a pretty massive conversation with a lot of different moving parts to it. So I've decided to bring on none other than music writer, reviewer, and interviewer Eric the Young God, somebody who longtime fans of the channel will recognize from his intro he did on the new Classic mixtape from back in the day. But he's been making content and doing music-based stuff for years now at this point. So I figured who better to have on and have this conversation. Let's talk with Eric. All right, here we are. Eric, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with me. So yeah, it's been a year out from Watch the Party Die, essentially a little bit more. And a lot of the conversation around this track now sort of seems to center around it being just prophetic, which, before we kind of dig into the details as to why that may be, do you feel like that generally is true?
Well, before I get into that, thank you for having me on.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, and it's funny. I was thinking about this last night, and I guess yes, but in the same sense, like this album or this song came out where we were coming into election year, and everything was already kind of about to crumble. You know what I'm saying? It was like
Hmm.
it felt like things were already crumbling before this. Diddy had already got in trouble. Um,
Right.
and just more society things. Like there's been just a lot of crazy stuff going on
Hmm.
within the world. So Young Thug and them was already locked up around that time. So a lot of Ricos was going on. Pee Wee Longway got a Rico that same year. So a bunch of Atlanta stuff was already falling. So yes, but it wasn't like he put this song out and then everything started to crumble. Everything was already crumbling before the song came out.
Right. So it wasn't so much him like, and this may just be people like not fully understanding the timeline. Like it might not be, or probably was not Kendrick like predicting the future. It wasn't foresight. He was just seeing things as they currently were
Yeah.
in that exact moment. And not only that, but like kind of making a judgment based on the direction things were already going, where things were likely to move over the course of the next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. So, let's start with like Atlanta as a topic since you kind of like opened things, up with that. But the thing is like, while it is true, that, obviously the Young Thug and YSL Rico trial was underway at that point. Like, did you, or do you think Kendrick could have possibly foreseen like a lot of what we've also sort of like witnessed in the wake of Young Thug, taking his plea deal, getting free, in terms of like the interrogation audio leaking and then the calls leaking. And, I feel like the trial was one thing. And I think the fact that that has like obviously shaken Thugger's career in a profound way. I mean, that was going to happen. That was likely regardless of, what else happened around that. But I feel like these calls, the interrogation stuff, it's like really shaken a lot of people's kind of like faith in the scene and maybe what a lot of fans like kind of understood on some level, like what it stood for. And in that sense, it sort of seems like the bubble popping like runs a lot deeper than, the music isn't like what it used to be.
Now, I think it started with the allegations of Gunna snitching, and
Mm,
that kind of started to divide. I feel like because when he came home, he wasn't working with the same people he was working with because they were taking Young Thug side. So
Right.
you see him working with like Kid and Burner Boy and like people that's not even from America. He's like doing different stuff because some of the producers that he didn't have access to anymore because they're taking Young Thug side. So
Yeah, he
that
was still on the label, but like there was clearly a separation there.
exactly. And then I feel like after Young Thug gets out, and like you said, then it just turns to a whole nother beast though. When the interrogation leaks, and he has like 300 phone call leaks, which by the way, I didn't know that was legal. That sounds crazy. You could just call up like to the police station like, hey, can I get this phone call just from this random person I have no association with? Sure. That feels like that shouldn't be legal, but that's crazy that was happening in the first place. And yeah, I do feel like after that happened, nobody could have seen phone calls leaking and like you said, interrogation things leaking. Like it was definitely something that felt like something out of straight out like a movie.
Do you think that there was essentially like Kendrick kind of observing what was going on with Gunna and sort of seeing that as maybe kind of like a blood in the water sort of thing? And it's like, if this is happening, there's got to be more going on deeper than this that people might read as being like, a bit of a betrayal or dishonest or inconsistent in some kind of way philosophically.
Uh, I don't think he put that much thought into what was going on in Atlanta. I think he just
Mm.
saying like, damn, Gunna, because he come from like a street background, so he just see like, damn, Gunna saying names, Gunna kind of telling, and that's what everybody was thinking. I don't think that he thought that, oh man, it's got to be deeper than this because nobody knew what was going to happen with the Young Thug thing.
Mm.
People thought that he was going to get some amount of time. Nobody thought that he was going to walk scot free. Like even if it was like 6 months or something, people thought he was going to get some amount of time. So I don't think that anybody, even Kendrick included, even put too much thought into when Young Thug come home. Man, it's gonna escalate to a different realm. I don't think he put that much thought into it.
Well, I mean, you do have to consider though, there like was obviously behind the scenes, and we only know about it now because of some of that call audio, like clearly some kind of personal distance that he was setting between himself and Young Thug and YSL, because Young Thug, obviously there was that one lead call where he was like
Yeah.
upset about like, oh, why doesn't Kendrick want to collab with me? Why doesn't he want to like help put me on? Why doesn't he want to work with me? Da 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 da. And I don't know. I mean, Kendrick's worked with a lot of popular artists. I mean, a lot of people who many fans have pointed out, like, oh, this other guy, you don't agree ideologically with this person. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like he's done work with a lot of artists who don't necessarily kind of like convey the same messages that he does in his music. So, I mean, for him not to make a connection with a rapper as popular as Young Thug at the time, there's got to be some other kind of decision or point of view there influencing that choice. I mean, it could be something as simple as like, I don't like the guy's music, or it could be something beyond that in terms of like, personally, there's something about the way that they operate or da 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 that I just don't want to associate myself with.
I could be wrong. I feel like honestly, it was as simple as he probably just didn't like the song that, it just wasn't his fit. Like I feel like Young Thug on some of those phone calls, I haven't said this, but I've been waiting to say this somewhere. It was so anti-art because, for example, before we get to the Kendrick thing, he's on a phone call with his manager and he's like, his manager's like, hey man, Morgan Wallen's probably gonna like outsell us. And he's like, who's that? He's like, man, it's a big country artist. And he's like, man, I don't know who that is, but we gotta put him on a song.
Hmm.
And I'm like, damn, you don't even know what his music sounds like. He could get on a song and say, black people smell like dogs. Like he should be saying anything, and you're just like, oh yeah, he sell a lot of songs. We gotta put him on the album, and that
Hmm.
just felt so anti art. I feel like Kendrick is the opposite of anti art. So Young Thug will put people on a song just because their numbers are great. So Young Thug is more so thinking. He said that he was like, man, ain't nobody really listening to J. Cole, but J. Cole big. So we got to put it on the album. So
Hmm.
I feel like his approach to music is much different than somebody's like Kendrick, where Kendrick may hear a song and be like, I don't know if I want to hop on this. Like, this ain't really what I'm feeling right now. Where Young Thug is like, man, Kendrick could have been farting on the song I would have hopped on because he the biggest person of all time. So I feel like that came from just one person looking at it from an artful perspective and the other person just looking at it from numbers.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe that could partially be influenced by Young Thug having to wear the hats of not just like an artist, but also like label head. It's like he's probably also, and that could be like the double-edged sword to having to do that exact thing, because you're probably making less conscious artistic choices than you are thinking of like, oh, well, a certain feature that's going to do numbers, like that's
Yeah.
going to get conversation going, that's going to be whatever.
And I don't mean to cut you
um
off, but I was Kendrick
mm,
in the same bag because he has PG Lang.
oh, for sure.
So he's also running the same thing. But it's just interesting to hear the way Young Thug was speaking about collaborating with artists. It wasn't like, oh man, I really like his music, I want to collab with him. It was just, hey, this person's going crazy, I gotta put him on there. And like I said, I just feel like I could see him presenting a song to Kendrick's team, Kendrick hearing it, and be like, I'm not feeling it. And he just took that. It's like, I would never do that. Like, if somebody wanted to collab with me and they had good numbers, I'm hopping on because that's good for business, you know?
Hmm.
So, yeah.
And to kind of stay on this topic, um but dig into this further, because this is obviously connected. This is another thing that I wanted to talk about, and it also came up in these prison calls. And, I do also want to specify, like, I and probably you don't think for a second that like Young Thug is the only person out here in the industry and hip hop who is, guilty of this sort of thing. But also in the midst of these calls, we saw the admission of him saying, I put down 50 grand on, DS Forever to get that album number one. And I feel like botting, faking streams, it's been something that we as music fans have been talking about for years. It's something that we, have our suspicions about. It's something that obviously there's a lot of noise around all the time. There's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of accusations. I mean, this is like one of the only times that we can like really point to where you have a very huge industry connected artist with the influence, with the power, the ability to do this, like saying point blank period, I did this. This is the amount of money that I spent, and this is the result that I got. And what do you think this kind of admission does to a scene of music fans? Does it like completely disillusion everyone from everything that they're listening to and kind of make them question whether or not the artists they're listening to, are they as big or as popular or as good as they actually think they are, since a lot of opinions and a lot of discourse is based around numbers now?
So I'm going to tie this into something that I personally enjoy. And I've seen you visit a few of these shows sometimes as well. I love professional wrestling. I watch a lot of wrestling. So
Mm,
right now in wrestling, the two biggest companies are WWE and AEW. Both of these companies, or both of the fans of these companies, similar to music, a lot of the discourse is around numbers. And with
right.
wrestling, the numbers is either how many people go to the shows or how many live viewers are happening on their TV shows. So
Mm,
sometimes it could be a great wrestling show. Some of the fans are like, okay, cool. What were the viewers? How many people watched the episode? How many people
right.
watched the pay-per-view? They're not even thinking about the actual matches. It's how many people bought the pay-per-view? How many people watched the pay-per-view? How many people watched the episode of Dynamite? How many people watched the episode of Raw? Whatever. So I say that to say I hate that fans have put themselves in this like it's so fucking nerdy, this nerdy ass numbers game where it's like, dog, my I just told you off camera a few albums that I'm listening to. I don't give a fuck how much they sold. They didn't sell a lot. I already know. I know the Duran Bernard album did not sell a lot, and the Nourished by Time album probably did not sell a lot. I love both of those albums. I know you said you like Nourished by Time, and I don't want to not answer your question, but I'm more so get aggravated just when I see those debates where it's like, first of all, that is crazy just to kind of pinpoint what you're talking about, that we heard it on camera, that or heard it on audio, that yeah, I did pay this amount of much money to get this happen, and to know that that's actually a real thing. So I feel like to confirm it, that's always good information to have. But to base numbers with quality, I feel like it's just almost dystopian. It's like just do you like the music though? Like I've never heard an album or I've never got recommended an album and say, "Hey, have you heard Lil Juju Man?" No. Oh, you should listen to him. Well, before I listen to him, how much he sold first week? It's like, okay, fucking dork. Who cares how much he sold first week? Is the music good? So, not to not answer your question, but that I just hate that line of thinking.
Well, I think that's the mindset or the question that should come into people's heads now, since like I feel like to some degree, anybody who is Young Thug size and up,
Yeah.
you have to presume, or in that ballpark, is like maybe doing botting on some kind of level. Even we see this kind of seeping into all types of content these days. Like, recently there was like kind of that fallout with the streamer Asmongold because he was kind of exposed for using bots, and even Ludwig did like a bit of a social experiment where he started a whole new account streaming on it with no followers, no nothing, and sort of found that like, man, like even though I am who I am, with like no visibility, no numbers there to sort of like get people in the door, because with more people watching, it sort of increases the likelihood that people stumble across what you do. Like, I'm basically dead in the water. I could sort of see on some level why people are like botting their streams, because without that on some level, like nobody's watching you do shit,
Yeah.
you know? So it could be a matter of like just giving these artists more visibility, so that, like you say, so that when those conversations happen, people are like, oh, the album went to number one, I suppose I'll check it out. Because I'm sure for some people they're finding it to be profitable in that those numbers, that success, that perception of success causes more kind of casual interest in what you do, because everybody sort of seemingly wants to be a part of something. But again, now that we know that on some level, like that is fake, you got to wonder, like, are the numbers that I'm seeing that are driving me to go try out this thing, are any of them actually even real? Am I being tricked? Am I being manipulated?
I've always been of the assumption, or at least for the past, like I was like 7 years, that definitely there's some funny business going on with numbers. I mean, that's tells all this time with payola, with radio. People were paying radio stations to get paid or to get played on their radio stations. Radio obviously isn't a big factor, but streaming is now. So the fact that streaming has almost replaced the radio, it made way too much sense for me that one avenue was going to get replaced by the other. So the fact that we heard it confirmed, I think that does. I think it's a big thing in a sense where you say visibility. Where I think for artists now they have to now, like if you're an upcoming artist, you say I might have to play the game. It's not as
Hmm.
just organic as one may seem, where I put out good music. I'm going to get reviewed by Pitchfork, and now I'm the biggest artist of all time, and Needle Drop's going to give me a 10 out of 10. And, like, it might not be that easy because you might have to play the game and you might have to pay 10, 20, 30,000 just to get featured on the billboards because you're botting or whatever. So I think it should be more of an eye opener for artists and, I guess fans who support these artists definitely should this should make you want to buy more tickets, buy more merch, and support artists, because a lot of these artists that are doing great to get there, maybe they bought it something, and like you said, you bought 100,000 listeners, and now you're on the billboards. Now people that never would have known you, they look at the billboards like, oh, I never heard of Young Thug. But without him buying it, he would have never been seen by the people that view the billboards and listen to the radio. So yeah, support your artists, and help them get that visibility as much as you can.
But long term,
Yeah.
this strategy sort of seems to be having less and less impact, even if you do have artists out here buying, tens of thousands of dollars worth of streams, because, recently there has been like some discourse and people pointing out the fact that like now in 2025, or at least as recently as like a few weeks ago, just before the release of the new Cardi B album, people had kind of noticed that like on the total, from top to bottom of the Billboard singles chart, there are only like 5 rap songs taking up various spots on that chart. Whereas like as recently as 5 years ago, there were dozens of rap songs kind of
Yeah.
taking up different spots on the charts. And we're kind of like slowly seeing that kind of diminish, before we kind of maybe talk about the why exactly that might be. And there's a lot of different things that we can point to. Is that something as well that you feel like Kendrick was kind of like predicting or anticipating with the, release of this song? I mean, obviously Watch the Party Die does address a lot of, powerful players in the music industry and in hip hop who he sees as kind of like being inferior morally, and that kind of like being their undoing and their destruction, because obviously they're out here scamming and presenting themselves in kind of like, disingenuous fashion and a host of other things. But, do you feel like this song in a way also kind of like addressed the idea of like, this is going to be the undoing of the genre itself, and we're going to see like a major slip go on commercially?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is one thing that that song definitely predicts, is that it might be a fall off of hip hop. It might be or you can look at it as a resetting of hip hop.
Hmm.
Because watching the party die may entail that hip hop is dead, or this party needs to die for hip hop to actually continue to live on. So
Hmm.
you could take that either way, that he's just writing it off permanently, or man, these were necessary deaths to get to a better future. So yeah, I listened to that song and definitely hear him, kind of, I feel like looking at it from like a bird's eye view of just hip hop and watching everything kind of just like carcass kind of just die.
And in terms of like, I don't, it's a difficult question to phrase because like, I don't want to lay obviously this effect at anybody's feet, but you have to sort of like wonder where exactly are, in your view, like the hit makers that we can usually sort of like rely upon to kind of like, maintain those numbers on the charts that we've sort of, become familiar with over the past like 10 plus years at this point. Like, where are those Atlanta names that we know? Why are Drake's recent singles like seemingly having not that much staying power? And a host of other names too that again we normally come to just like kind of expect, making hits, making songs that are in a chart, but like they're just like not out here generating the noise that they usually would.
Yeah, I was kind of telling you this in the DMs. Man, I am doom and gloom about hip hop these days. I am, for the most part. I'm like I get Nas. I'm like, is hip hop might be dead. Like, this shit sucks. When you asked me off camera, what's my favorite hip hop album? I struggled. I was scrolling like it's so hard because I think it's so many reasons, man. I think one, to not get too long-winded, but I think one is the lack of youth
Mm,
making music that's really staying. If we take 2025, for example, I think this is actually one of the better hip hop years in the decade.
mm,
Most of the albums that everybody's talking about are from people that have been in the game for 10 plus years. Rather if it's the Clips, rather if it's Chance, rather if it's who else? Joey, rather if it's whoever. Like, all of these people that are getting a lot of praise have been in the game for at least 10 plus years. They're not young bucks anymore.
mm.
So when we look at the people who are the kind of keeping the torch going, I would say it is kind of the people that we've been seeing for the long time. Like I said, Clips, Push T's been around for forever. Chan's been around for forever. Like, these albums, Freddie Gibbs been around for forever. Alchemist producing the album with Larry June and 2 Chainz. People have been around
Eh,
for forever.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys were much younger or just seemed kind of fresh and new to people in 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of old now.
Yeah, and I think the real question is like, where are these younger people? Because we look at the Atlanta scene, for example, the people that are doing any type of conversation are still the young thugs. Rather, if people like what he's putting out or not, people are talking about him. The little babies, the futures. How many new young Atlanta rappers can you name that are garnering really any buzz? The newest one is Cardi, and Cardi debuted when I was in high school. Over 10, like, so he's been around in the game for 10 plus years. So it's not a lot of people that are garnering a lot of conversation, and I think it's just the stagnancy of subject matter. People talking about the same exact thing. I think there was so much more variety in hip hop
Hmm.
even 10 years ago. Now it's just kind of the same thing getting pushed. And before I stop talking, I'll be remiss if I didn't shout out the two people from Atlanta that I'm listening to the most. Um, Mexico Joe and Lil Tony.
Hmm.
I love Mexico Joe a lot. Mexico Joe, producer, plug a lot of those plug beats that those are him. But he's rapping now, and he's like, it's almost like self-help rap. His big song, um, uh, I'll look it up right now, but it's essentially about him laying off on liquor, and he's saying how he was struggling with liquor addiction and how it was
Hmm.
really getting to him. And he's like, day one, this is how I went. Day two, day three, I almost relapsed. And that type of rap is really blowing up right now because people are like, man, I can relate to this. This is relatable. No date. That's
Right,
me.
right.
But yeah, stuff like that, I feel like will resonate with people because people want to hear something that they can relate to, and they can't relate to the thousand same subject matter from the same type of rapper. So yeah.
That is something I did kind of want to dig into because you did mention Cardi there, and this is something I haven't really talked about in any videos yet. I mean, it's something I've kind of like slowly and progressively reflected on as I've reviewed not just Cardi's music, but anybody related to the Opium label or anybody who could be kind of like categorized within that rage lane, and something that wasn't like apparent when this stuff was first blowing up and was actually, starting to make some waves, and you saw some big Cardi features, and you actually did like see Opium actually like, really beginning to get a decent buzz going. But the thing is, like, in the wake of that, a lot of these dudes on Cardi's label, even though some of that fervor has died down, they have not really changed course. And on top of that, like, a lot of the dudes who have kind of taken influence from them have only started to make music that, yes, feels like a bit of a variation of that. Sometimes incorporating some elements of electronic music, maybe a little bit of pop too, but it still sounds like really fucking distorted, so fried, very, abrasive to the ear. And anybody who's like kind of uninitiated or kind of unfamiliar with it is like not going to get it on first listen.
Yeah.
And, what's clear to me is like these guys do not give a fuck about commercial appeal. They don't. And, while it is kind of funny to kind of people kind of strictly refer to this as like, this is underground because like, some of these dudes comparatively, like they do bigger numbers than Billy Woods or Mike, like, both of whom I know you listen to, I vibe with those guys too, especially Billy. So it's like, we know way more we know way more underground rappers than these guys, but it is clear that like they know and are fully aware of the fact that for what they do, there is a ceiling for it, and they have no interest whatsoever in going beyond that ceiling or making a sound that's going to push themselves past that. Like they want to make this like really abrasive, really rowdy, really noisy shit. And, that I think in another context is the next generation of artists who in another time period, another paradigm would be like, yeah, let's try to make the hit. Let's get this person in the studio. Let's get that person in the studio. What kind of beat is trendy right now? For that period of time that I know you're aware of, like everybody had to have one fucking song on their album that sounded like Astro World. Everybody had to have one fucking song on their album that sounded like, One Dance or, Hold On, We're Going Home, because like that was kind of the flavor of the month, and these guys don't seem to care at all about any of that shit. Like they care about their sound, they care about their trend, they care about their niche. And I mean, even though there doesn't really seem to be like a lot of relatable lyrics and a lot of like depth behind the ethos from it that we can see from the outside, like these guys really do seem to care about like their sound and their sonic world that they're building, and they're just devoted to that. And they don't really care about other stuff coming in and influencing it. And I think there's something to be said for that, because it is impacting the way, because I mean, these guys are hip hop, they're considered within the genre, and they are making something that is built off the genre, and they just don't really seem to care about chart positions or making anything for anyone that would appeal outside of that context, outside of their world. And, to me, that is kind of truly hip hop in a way, because like a lot of those guys from the 80s and the 90s and so on and so forth, like, sure, you had guys like Big E who had the one or two tracks that they kind of compromised on their records that were like, this one's going to be for radio or whatever. But these guys don't give a fuck about radio at all, or like playlisting or any of that stuff, or at least like, in terms of like making a sound that's going to play to that sort of world. So they're really kind of devoted to their sound, and it's impacting the way that we're kind of seeing rap on the charts right now, because these guys are not making hits. They're doing it for themselves, apparently.
No, I got a perfect example. I entered, so this is like almost combining, like you're talking about, like the Billy Woods and the Mikes. This is combining both of the undergrounds. I interviewed Euro Droog, and in that
Right.
interview, I played him my favorite artist from the other underground scene, Laser Dim. I
Hmm.
played it for him, and he was so confused. He didn't know what was going on. Months later, he texted me and was like, "I get it now,"
Hmm.
because it was just so abrasive for what he's usually, used to hearing. He didn't understand it. Now, literally, like I always say, like once a week, he texts me like a laser dim related video. It could just be him like running around a tennis court. Like he just loves laser dim now. Oh, shout out to Euro Drew. He just dropped a song produced by Madlib featuring Wiz Khalifa and Jay Electronica. The most random assortment of names of all time. But
Right.
Laser Dim is an artist who his sound, his beats, I actually it frustrates me because I wish he would rap over better beats, but he loves these just chaotic. It sounds like Armageddon. Just feels like I'm just getting rained down with meteorites. Like it's crazy. And he's rapping his behind off on these songs. But like you said, he loves his sound. And that's representative of a lot of those artists in the underground is that they're not going to cater to, they're not going to rap over some beat that's poppy and try to get it on the radio or whatever. They're doing what they like. Even a bigger artist like Youngboy. Youngboy is doing what Youngboy wants to do. He doesn't get any radio play, but he has found his sound and his fans love it. He's
Hmm.
not trying to rap over he raps over what he wants. He's not rapping over stuff that he thinks is going to get on the billboards. Whatever he want to do, he does, and it works. And I feel like somebody like Youngboy is actually a great blueprint for an underground artist where it's like, man, he's doing what he wants to do, making his own type of music, and he's the biggest artist out right now. I think I could do the same. So I feel like a lot of these dudes look up to Youngboy because he does that. And somebody like Cardi as well.
No, it's true. I mean, it's like, again, they're just like kind of marching to the beat of their own drum, and in a way, I mean, this is kind of like the way that I know we're sort of like looking at this in kind of a doom and gloom sort of way because, we're sort of like seeing this uh, kind of like sea change in terms of like hip hop being the commercial zenith that it's been for as long as it's been. I mean, it's something that we're so intimately entwined with because it's been something that we've been covering on YouTube for like over 10 years. And it's like, it's been basically like a prime subject matter of our entire YouTube existence, our social media existence, as it were. But like, with that being said, uh, something that makes me kind of hopeful, and this kind of alludes to one of the words that you used earlier, and that was like reset. I feel like this kind of things being less orbiting around whatever is the trendy sound or trendy thing at the moment and allowing people to just kind of do their own thing has kind of put us back into like that chaotic Dat Piff era a little bit, where you've just got like all these random different artists doing their own random different thing. I mean, sadly, it's not like on a platform that is as cool as that.
Yeah.
And we're all sort of like, being fed it through a bunch of shitty algorithms on music streaming platforms instead, which I mean, does kind of like, I think poison the well a bit in terms of like what really genuinely organically gets exposure. But still, it sort of seems like everybody's kind of looking around and there's no like leader, as it were, dictating what everybody should be doing. And as a result, everyone's just kind of doing their own thing.
No, yeah, it's no, like I said, no leader. It's no real blueprint. You have artists with, like I said, you could look at a Cardi or a Young Boy and kind of take their blueprint, but there's no kind of just like one thing to do anymore. There's, like you said, you have to play with the algorithm. You might have the bot. It's so much. There's, like you said, there's no Dat Piffs or I was a live mixtape kid. Like there's like nobody's really using live mixtapes anymore to organically find music, anything. Like I remember finding Big Crit on live mixtapes. And I remember
Mm.
like just vividly that was like it was Crit was here and I was like, this is crazy. And now people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you find music? And honestly, if you're being honest, I have a friend named Rari. He sends me a bunch of stuff. He's like, he should be like an A&R, KTT. That's like my Reddit essentially. I'm always on
Mm.
KTT finding stuff. Um, but I ask people like, how do you find music? And the most common thing that I hear is playlists. People are big on playlists. They're like, I listen to playlists. And I'm like, where are you getting playlists from? And I think they're just like going to Apple Music playlist and stuff of that nature. But it's like, how do you get in that playlist? Like how organic is that? So it's it's hard, man. It's not like you said, it's not real one way to do it. And I feel like hip hop commercially dying, in my opinion, is a reset. I feel like it's a good thing. I feel
Mm.
like people need to see, hey, this ain't working no more. We gotta do something else. Because it's not that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's broke. Somebody need to put it together. So yeah, man, like I said, more and more, I feel like Nas. I'm like, man, hip hop kind of dead right now. But it might be a good thing.
Yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper into that idea because again, we kind of referred to this as like a bit of a reset. Nobody's out here sort of like dictating one sound or one direction or one rule that everybody should be following to make their art, to make their hip hop record, to make their whatever.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like that puts the genre for the next 5 years? You know, are rap singles topping or climbing the charts going to continue to be as rare as they are currently? If we see them again in the near future, is it just going to be from the big names that we know who have been able to kind of like, you know, outlast the popularity of the genre or whatever stage it's in terms of popularity because they have their own kind of passionate fan base that's going to listen to them whenever and wherever they drop a track? Or, you know, do we potentially see like some new names actually coming up who have kind of like worked outside of the Cardi formula or the other underground formula, or, you know, are doing something completely different from a Drake or a Cole or a Kendrick?
I think I think a big problem are labels. I think
Mm,
labels suck at their job. There's no
mm,
more artist development. The way that they are finding these artists, they're buzzing on TikTok, let's sign them.
yeah.
So they're not really actually finding people that they actually like. Like sometimes they're just signing the algorithm. It's like we don't even really think this guy's good, but he's in the algorithm. Let's sign him. And I feel like a lot of these artists are suffering because I look at it like sports. I love sports. A lot of athletes get failed by the team they're drafted for because they did not develop them properly. They're not
Mm,
developing these artists properly at all. And that's why you see so much stagnancy because they sound the way they did when they first came in because the label they signed with aren't helping develop them at
mm,
all. So the way that we are getting so much just kind of mediocrity and BS is because on these labels, I feel like it's because they don't. They're just it's like these people don't know music. They don't know how to help these artists. They don't know what to do, and these artists just kind of get left in the wind. So, like I said, I am pro hip hop kind of dying off commercially because maybe that have forced labels. Well, it either do two things. It'll force labels to get better at the job, or just to kind of drop rap completely and just not make it a priority to get them signed. But I don't know what it looks like in the next 5 years because of that. I don't know if we get new artists that are pushing the envelope. I mean, like I said, the younger artists that we do hear, a lot of times they're not for me. And I feel like a year from now they're gone. They have like a little wave. So I don't know, man. I feel like there just needs to be a real deal reset on hip hop from the mainstream, definitely, to even parts of the underground. The underground's putting out probably the better music than the mainstream, but there just needs to be a full reset.
the way that you kind of talk about artists' connections with labels and kind of how that could be sort of toxic and hurtful for the genre, it leads me to want to ask, you know, and also in context to this Kendrick song here, like obviously he's voicing a lot of criticisms of rap music as a whole. Um, some of which you've echoed here, you know, aspects of the genre that sort of need to die off or something new to kind of replace it. Are these problems that you as a fan and a longtime fan kind of observe as being like root to the genre itself, like it was like literally there under the floorboards and it was going to come up and become a problem at this point in time because it's just been so persistent for so long? Or are these issues and problems that came about as a result of the commercialization of the genre and labels essentially moving in and being like, we can sign this guy, get him to change his sound, compromise his ideals, or we can kind of like undercut some of these artists who are like, you know, really about the genre and the culture and kind of overshadow them commercially with other artists who are willing to kind of do maybe a watered down version of this? Like, again, is this a root thing or is this a commercialization, bastardization thing?
I think it could be all that plus another thing that I'll end it off with. Um, but I think it could be the commercialization, of course, because I mean, obviously when hip hop started, you say it started like in a neighborhood in New York or whatever, and it was not commercial at all. It was very underground. It was very counterculture, for the longest. And then you start to see it on commercials and you start to see it in movies and it becomes sanitized because I've been interviewing a lot of artists from like the 70s. Like I interviewed the lead singer of the Stylistics, Russell Thompson Jr. And I asked him, I said, why do you feel like black music in general, there's definitely, because when you think about those old R&B songs, Marvin Gaye, they had social messages. They had messages about just what was going on in society, what was going on in the black community, what was going on in politics, whatever. In
Hmm.
R&B, you don't hear that at all. You don't hear that at all anymore. There's no social messages prevalent at all. There's still, you have people like Kendrick who will have a social message, but in totality, I think that the labels and the people pulling the strings have done a good job of taking really important messages out of hip hop. So I think that's done damage because I think about it all the time. Most Def was a mainstream rapper, and he was rapping about a lot of very, very, very political things. He was mainstream. Most Def now would be very underground. He would be Arm& and Hammer.
Oh yeah,
You know
absolutely.
what I'm saying? He wouldn't have that platform at all. But back in the 90s, there were so many conscious rappers that said a lot of things. One of my favorites, freaking one of my favorite songs of all time, Hip Hop by my mind is blanking. Freaking oh my gosh, I can't believe my mind's blanking right now. It'll come to me. But regardless, you won't hear songs like that in the mainstream anymore because they've done a good job sanitizing it. And
Mm.
one of the things that I was going to say is that it's going to be controversial. You were talking about the kids and like who's going to take from it. Man, I think that this is a conversation about society. I think a lot of these younger kids are just not cool. That's going to play into it in hip hop, dog. Black culture has always been cool, and it's not just young black kids. A lot of these kids just not cool. So the people that's gonna set the trends out, it can't be them. I don't know who it's gonna be. A lot of these kids just not cool. So man, I
Mm.
don't know who gonna take that. But Dead Prez, by the way, that's what I was thinking about. But
Okay,
yeah,
okay, okay.
shout to Dead Prez. But yeah, you just won't hear that stuff in the mainstream anymore. But keep going.
As far as like the perception of cool, I don't know. Do you feel like that is something that is like a generational perception, and maybe it's hard to see people who are younger than you or I as cool because maybe you kind of see through that facade, or do you feel like it has to do maybe with kind of like a socialization thing and kind of like the context in which you grow up in because like maybe people are just so atomized due to the internet and what we perceive as being like on trend and not has more to do with what we see through an app versus like how we're interacting with each other in kind of like a personal way because like sometimes the appeal or like the charisma or like the if you want to call it like the pizzazz of a certain artist or a certain album from a certain region had a lot to do with like what was their style there, or how they talked to each other, the lingo that came through on an album or
You're taking the
whatever,
thoughts out of my brain. I just want to say that
Right,
you're taking the
exactly.
thoughts out of my brain.
And
That's exactly
that's
what it is.
and that's true of like, rock music and electronic music too, in terms of like, what kinds of beats or whatever certain DJs favor, whether you're from the UK or whether you're from Detroit or whatnot, or what kind of riffs you favor or kind of like, specialize in with your music, whatnot. But now everything just seems like so homogenized and generalized now that, whatever is like cool depends on what's going viral at the moment on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And if you're not plugged into it or if you don't see anything to that trend, it just kind of seems whack to you, I guess.
Man, you're literally taking the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say homogenization. I was gonna use that word, like literally the homogenization of culture through social media. That's what it is. It's just we
Mm,
all say the same slang now, where back in the day, New York had their own slang, the South had their own slang, the way we all talk the same. Everything is there's no more regional anything anymore. Everything is the same. Like you'll hear a rapper from New York and think he's from Atlanta. And it's like, you think of Designer. Everybody thought Designer was Future, who's from Atlanta. And then when they found out he wasn't Future, it was like, oh man, this is an Atlanta rapper. No, he's from New York. So
mm,
it's one of those things where I think that also is not helping hip hop. There needs to be more regional sounds. And that's why I feel like somewhere like Michigan took off because they had a regional sound. That's why you see the Veezes and the Babyface Rays and the Rio de Young OGs and all of them who popped off in 2020, they had their own sound
mm.
versus everybody trying to sound like the South or everybody trying to sound like whatever, So I love what Kendrick did with GNX, regional sound. It's like
Mm.
more of the regional sounds. I think that's great for hip hop because we all sound the same in hip hop and speaking to each other. There needs to be more saying our own slang, using our own sounds. It's not enough of that in hip hop anymore. It truly is saddening.
No, I was also like kind of inspired by what even though the album was like just too long and too much and it's like it's very difficult sort of style and vibe to kind of extend out across two discs. I really like what Metro Boomin did with his new project.
Yeah.
Sort of like doing that glammy 2000s Atlanta sound. And I mean, again, it's a little much for two entire discs of music, but there were like some bangers on that album. There were like some incredible tracks on that record. And, honestly, I almost kind of liked the fact that there were a lot of people that were just like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't fuck with this sound, or why does it sound like this? Why does it sound like Atlanta from this point in time? And it's like, because that's fucking where he's from. And like it influenced him. Like, I like that there are artists out there making conscious choices where they're just like, you know what? Not everybody needs to get this,
Yeah.
and if
I'm
everybody doesn't get it, that's fine.
I'm so glad Metro Boomin did that because not only did he show like I could be a big artist and do like a regional sound, there's a song on there that's the biggest song on the internet. The Take Me Through That, Take Me Through That. That's
I love that. I
everywhere.
love that track.
So I love that that song blew up because it's like, look at this guy, even though it's like a retro regional sound, he
Right.
made a very regional album with a very regional song, and look how it took off. So like the same way we're talking about blueprints, I want that to be a blueprint to be like, damn, he made a song that's like an ode to his hometown. Like I said, you don't have to make like a retro song, but like he made a song that was an ode to his hometown, and it's everywhere right now. I love that. So I need more of that, less of I'm going to make a song that sounds like the TikTok algorithm.
Well, I wanted to ask you as well. You were referencing Nas a few points over the course of this interview, and the fact that like some of your favorite hip hop albums, and this is the case for me too, have you've noticed that like they're being made by older artists.
Mhm.
Like obviously the Clips album is kind of like one of the most discussed records of the year. In context of this reset that we're talking about, do you feel like records like this have anything to do with that, or is this just like kind of an anomaly that has arisen due to the fact that like all the young kids who probably would be making noise and taking up that commercial space that maybe Eclipse would be, they're just like, no, we want to do this weird underground shit. Like meanwhile that kind of leaves space open for more people to talk about like, Rakim has a new album out all of a sudden, or Slick Rick is doing some random 27-minute project, or and other names from that era as well. Like Ghostface is doing Supreme Clientele too. Out of
Yeah.
all the times to do it,
Yeah.
probably would have been more 2012 to 2013, but he still did it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is kind of like again, a part of that trend, a part of that reset, or are younger people, or is anybody looking to these albums like, yeah, this is the way forward? Or are these guys just eating up space that other artists, smaller artists, younger artists are just refusing to take up because they just want to do their own thing?
Before I answer that, I have to talk about my favorite song really quickly from an older guy.
Hmm.
Slick Rick has a song called Landlord on that new album.
Right.
And I guess he's like a parody. He's doing like a parody of like a landlord. The song is ridiculous. I've ever heard like that type of stuff. I feel like this is what I love about hip hop. It's so ridiculous. It's so unique. He made a song from a landlord. He made a song from a perspective of a landlord, and he's being just like terrible throughout the song. He's like kicking poor people out. He's like, "You don't have the rent. Too bad. Too sad. You're gonna be homeless." Like it's such a ridiculous song, and I feel like the creativity that we're seeing is kind of coming from the older guys. The younger people are lacking that creativity. Where you listen to clips, the what's the song with Stove Got Cooks that you don't know where I go?
Yeah.
FICO.
Yeah. FICO.
That is the most creative flow of the year. The
Hmm.
rhyme scheme, excuse me, that they were doing when they were rhyming like every like first and fifth bar. That was insane. And it's just I'm not getting that from somebody that's 23, 22, unfortunately. Where once upon a time, you would turn on an album from a young person like a Nas or whatever, and you'd be blown away rather if you were his age or 35. So I don't think that they're taking up space. I think that they're really, like I said, giving some of the most creative songs and projects of 2025 or of the decade in general. So I just, man, creativity sometimes is just I feel like it's lost on a lot of younger artists. What you about
Well,
to say?
I guess the question is like from that observation
Yeah.
is like, do you see that creativity creating any kind of like momentum from this point, or are we watching like the death rattle of the last generation of guys who were going to do it this way? You
I,
know?
I don't know, man. I hope so. I would hope that it would like inspire a younger person, Like the Clips album, I feel like that's the biggest that's I don't know. Is that like the biggest rap album of the year? I don't know. Is that sell the most this year out of all rap albums?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest rap album of the year, but I mean it's one of the most
It's
discussed,
one of
and
the most.
it's sold over 100K, you
Yeah,
know, so
for
I mean it
sure.
did well.
What's the biggest rap album of the year? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I
It
forget
was,
off the top of my head. I know the Travis Scott, you know, even comparatively, like the Jack Boys 2
I
did more numbers out
forgot.
of the
I
gate.
forgot that did drop. Forget that did
But
drop.
the thing
Yeah.
is, a lot of people forgot it dropped.
The point that I'm making, but
It's a shelf life thing, you know, because the thing
yes.
is, like, you know, even if the clips doesn't end up selling, you know, maybe let's say hypothetically 5 times as much as the Jack Boys, people are still
Mhm.
talking about it and people are still listening to it. And nobody's freaking talking about the Jack Boys 2 record,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'm not ruling out what you're proposing there as far as like a young person kind of taking something from this new Clips album as like a point of inspiration. I'm not ruling that out as a possibility, but it would be a really big paradigm shift in terms of like the generational ties within the genre itself, at least from what I've been able to view from the outside, because like for years now, and I know you've seen it, there's been this like hostile relationship between like the younger generation and the
Yeah.
newer generation in terms of like what's good, what's bad, what type of music you should be making and shouldn't, and what's whack and what isn't, and so on and so forth. And you know, I feel like it would be a big change for a 16-year-old to be listening to somebody as old as Pusha T at this point and being like, this is great. I want to do this.
hmm I feel like the I was literally just talking about this 2 days ago on Xbox. Like this is the same as that conversation because we were talking about how this is a real thing, specifically in NBA, where NBA the older NBA fans, LeBron's the best of all time, or not,
Mm.
Michael Jordan's the best of all time. The
Right,
younger
right, right, right.
LeBron, and but with the younger, they are very dismissive of a lot of older NBA players, where it's like 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 this is terrible. This sucks. They're playing against plumbers. I don't want to watch this. This is terrible, and
Right.
it's so dismissive. And you get the same thing in hip hop where you'll get like somebody that's 19 years old where they would be super duper adverse to listening to anything that was before them. And that's not new to the younger generation because you have people like the little Yachties and stuff where it was like they didn't know anything about that came before them. So people are always like that. I do feel like this generation does seem a little bit more adverse to listening to that. And then the older people, of course, they're not going to like a 45-year-old hip hop fan from New York. It's probably not going to like anything Playboy Cardi related.
Well,
And
that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like at least artistically, I don't know about
yeah,
personally, but at least like artistically, it sort of seems like that gap is widening.
yeah,
Like I could imagine, for example, in 2012, a 16-year-old Joey Badass fan maybe, you know, humoring what you know, like an older Jay-Z fan might say or might be relaying to them in terms of an opinion or a perspective, because like there's a lot more musical and sort of aesthetic and stylistic and lyrical overlap there. Whereas like what the fuck would a 15-year-old Ken Carson fan care about, like, you know, what a 40 something Clips fan thinks at this point? You know,
yeah.
it's like you're just like on two different completely wavelengths
Well, you gotta
in
think
a
about it.
way.
I was I don't know how old I was, the 14-year-old Joey Badass fan at that time.
Mm.
So I am the person you're talking about
Yeah,
where
from your own perspective.
from my own perspective, where when I was listening to Joey, and anybody my age I was listening to Joey was also listening to like the other, the older stuff too. Like I feel like
Mm.
if you were in my age range listening to Joey at that time, you're definitely probably curious of like because that's the type of rap. You're probably trying to listen to MF Doom or you're trying to listen to the Nas's or the Jay-Z's or whatever because uh that was that type of movie that music that Joey made. It was definitely like the I respect my elders hip hop, that was what he that was that type of music he was making. And if you were a fan, you probably were the same way. So yeah, like you said, it's much more overlap between a Joey Badass and then listen to like a Nas, then listen to like a Ken Carson and a Nas. You can't get further from similarities at all.
You know, and even kind of taking it to like a little Yachty or a lot of the Atlanta stuff that was popping off at the time. Like I could even see generationally like there being a lot more kind of like cross-pollination going on between like what some of those younger fans were listening to from those artists and like maybe getting into an Outkast or something like that, or any number of different Southern artists, because like there's way more stylistic overlap there. But, a Playboi Carti or a Ken Carson versus somebody who's like trying to put somebody onto like UGK,
Yeah.
to me, that sort of seems almost like alien, or like it would be a difficult conversation, kind of like getting past, or like, I mean, even at this point, it seems like a foreign language to like translate or transition from what Ken Carson is doing to like what Waka Flocka did back in 2010.
Right.
Like even that seems like a far cry away, or like what T.I. was doing on trap music.
I'll tell you who I feel like the one of the catalysts for that was Yachty. Like I feel like Yachty is kind of like I feel like if you were a Future fan, I feel
Mm.
like you could probably be a Future fan. There's overlap with like Outkast because he's literally a Dungeon Family
Right,
like
right, right.
member or whatever. Like you could do stuff like that. I feel
Right.
like people who liked Yachty, that was like the beginning of the end. Like I feel like the younger people who listen to Yachty was not listening to any of that older stuff at all because
Mm.
that was the like embracement of the youth movement. Because Future's much older than Yachty. Like Future's
Yeah.
like in his 40s, where Yachty is in his late.
Future's as old as some of these guys who have been out here for years that people have been ignoring because they're old, but we just don't view Future to
Exactly.
be as old.
Exactly, so it's like he's like T.I. in the age, you know what I'm saying? But he
Right.
he popped around way later than T.I. So
Right.
it's one of those things where I feel like Yachty was kind of the catalyst of like young people being like, this is the youth movement. We don't want to listen to anything else. And that was what, like
Yeah, it was
2015-ish,
2015,
right?
2016.
So like around that time, and then that's when you start to get the pumps and the Uzis and the SoundCloud era, where I feel like the SoundCloud era was the beginning of we not listening to these old folks no more, in my
Hmm.
opinion. I feel like that's the start of that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, to his credit, even J. Cole around that time tried to make that connection with
Yeah,
like Pump personally, but it just didn't really seem to stick or
I
kind of
forgot
like
about that.
grow
Yeah,
into anything.
yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of madness that we can go over the past 10 years for sure.
I
Um,
forgot about that. That's funny.
um, we've discussed a lot of different points throughout this conversation. I mean, I feel like we've already kind of discussed where we might predict, where things go from here. Like, what do you feel like this means for maybe Kendrick personally? Maybe leave things off on that note artistically. I mean, I feel like right now we have like some major Mount Rushmore hit makers, or like some of the biggest names right now from this generation, this, kind of generation, which things like really peaked commercially: Kendrick, Drake, Cole. In addition to that, like, Tyler, the Creator, with each new album really kind of continues to make the case for
Yeah,
himself as being like that fourth spot
yeah,
on the Mount Rushmore. You could argue Travis Scott, Future too. Like, as we see the genre kind of like deflate in a way commercially, and we sort of see this reset, do we see kind of like that lack in popularity or that deflation kind of taking these artists with it? Or do you feel like they've developed fan bases and brands that kind of like exist beyond the style as a whole, and they're just kind of like, in their own world at this point?
yeah. Somebody like Kendrick is like bigger than the genre at this point. He was a Super Bowl performer. It's like
Right.
people like that where it's just like they can't be touched. People in that Jay-Z sphere, people like they're like pop culture at a point. Like
Yeah.
Kanye's pop culture at this point. Like
Right. Kendrick has a popularity that transcends the genre. You have people
yeah.
out there that don't really dive that deeply into hip hop who are huge Kendrick fans and they just love his music.
Yes, he's entering the Eminem of Eminem. It's like I don't listen to hip hop that much, but that Kendrick is pretty snazzy. So
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, he's getting in there. So I feel like people of that stature, they're good, Drake good, like they're all good
Hmm.
of where their popularity, but these people that are like below them, you know, um like I said, keep going to shows, keep buying merch because it's not really cutting it with the numbers anymore.
Let's dig into Drake a little bit,
Yeah.
specifically with that comment though, because I don't know. I think this does specifically affect him in a slightly different way, and not just to make it a Kendrick comparison, because I think Tyler is an exception to this as well, because he's got his own sound, he's got his own direction, he's got his own
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but like I do think someone like Drake is in a pretty severe position in a context where you don't have maybe 4 or 5 different trending, viral, popular, billboard topping sounds within rap music doing really well right now,
Hmm.
because Drake historically has always been a bit of a, you could say this is to his credit, like a bit of a chameleon of an artist where he has his ear to what's in the underground, what's popular, and is just sort of like, oh, this is kind of popping off.
Yeah.
This is kind of popping off. And again, in a paradigm where you don't have like these buzzing viral sounds and artists who he sees that kind of like market potential in taking their sound or borrowing from it and having them on an album and doing a track that is in their style. I mean, we see him going back to the Yeet well repeatedly at this
Yeah.
point because, I mean, Yeet is the closest thing to a super hot viral new sound, you know? And in a world where maybe over the next 3 to 4 years, because nothing stays popular forever, where
Yeah.
even that dies down, what does Drake do next? Because
Well,
I feel like he's not in a position where he can kind of take advantage of something that is prevailing within music, unless he just fully goes pop.
yeah.
That's also a possibility.
I feel like rap Drake. So like I'm in the bubble where rap Drake is not my favorite Drake at like
Mm,
really be like I think he's been so still with his like rapping. It just doesn't do anything for me. It's just it leaves me asking for more. It's like, is that it? Like you have to do something.
mm.
I personally feel like he shines the best when he's singing. I really do like his R&B music a lot. I thought he shined well on that Some Sexy Songs for You. So man, I think there's a lane there for him. I know he dibbles and dabbles in both, kind of primarily still in the rap, but I don't know, man. I see a world where people, because for all the dogs, it just felt creatively bankrupt. It felt like
Mm.
he just didn't rap about the same stuff. Just rap about nothing. That was like I joked and said that mixtape series that Wiley had like more about nothing. That should have been like a part of that series. It was just about nothing. He's talking about absolutely zero. And I feel like that's what he does when he raps. And I don't know. He needs to do something. I think he probably will start rapping over more hip hop beats on Iceman. Think he was gonna do more of the what was the Four Other Dogs Part Two little thing that he did? The
Hmm.
what was the Part Two he put out with the little six
That little
songs?
extra EP that he did, yeah.
I think he's gonna start doing that. Even then, I personally I don't really care. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's going to have to do something because the same old after the beef. I feel like people are kind of looking at him like, you gotta do something more, you know? So you can't lose and still be, playing around.
Yeah, and I mean, I would hope that he could like learn from his own successes a little bit, because I do think to a degree, like he did at least get a bit of a hint of a potential path forward with a track like Nokia, for example, doing as
Yeah.
well as it did commercially. And even I love that track. I think it's a really entertaining track. I think it's a really fun track.
Very.
And maybe following your nose towards something that is like less dour and forlorn and obsessed with like kind of like the dark place that you're in and how much everybody wants the world to end for you and so on and so forth, and giving the fans something clearly they responded to because it was fun, it was lighthearted, it was catchy, it made everybody forget about how terrible things are going for themselves right now, and didn't make them have to sort of like feed into how terrible you feel like things are going for you. I mean, Drake historically is somebody who, in some of his best moments, obviously he's had a lot of moody tracks too that make people think about their ex.
Yeah.
But in a lot of his best moments too, he's made a lot of hype and fun and entertaining songs that people can just like kind of like let loose to. You know what I mean? And I feel like he's been, almost averse to that, or when he has done that on moments or records like CLB, for example, it's kind of going in such a weird direction where it feels almost like he's doing a Lonely Island song or some ridiculous parody or something like that. Something that kind of hits a nice middle ground, which I think Nokia does,
Yeah.
could be a potential way forward, because I don't think like, just kind of going out there over the next 5, 6 years and just being like, Who's popping right now? Like who's got a viral track? Like who's got
Yeah,
a hot sound right now that I can just like have on my album is going to continue to do is going to continue to work in an era where like you only have four, maybe three rap songs at a time on the Billboard Hot 200.
I agree. I agree that because I think where me and you also agree. I think me and you have the same favorite Drake album.
Hmm.
If you're reading this is too late, that's your favorite, right?
Right.
It's my favorite too. And there's a lot of anthems on there. There's a lot of, like you said, like uh make you feel good, make you get up. And I feel like he has. I never thought about that, but he hasn't done that in a minute. Like I feel like he hasn't had like a real fun fight. Like I was running through the six with my woes. Like
Woo woo.
I don't think he has had that type of anthem in a quite long time. I could be wrong, but I feel like he hasn't had that in a minute, right? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like he needs that.
Eric, I appreciate you taking the time for this conversation and shedding some light on everything we talked about, just with your own perspective. You've been doing this for a long time, and I hope people recognize that through your interviews, through your reviews, through everything that you do. And of course, we're going to link to that down below so people can check out, your YouTube and everything else.
Hey man, I appreciate you for having me on. I want to say this publicly. Don't cut this out. Thank you for always giving me a platform. I was I was in ninth grade when you first reached out to me. I want to tell this story. We gotta have this in here. I don't care. This ain't about Kendrick.
Yeah,
I
but
would
before you came on, I did go back and listen to the intro that you did for the Cal mixtape because that shit is 10 years old now.
it's 10
That's
years
that
old.
shit is a decade old.
Man, I was in ninth grade. I followed you. I had like, I don't know, regular 200 followers. You followed me out of nowhere. I remember posting a picture. I had a bunch of Jordan flip-flops. I put them in a heart and I got in the middle of the heart and I like took like did like a funny pose. You DM'd me and was like, I remember you said, I knew I followed you for a reason. I was like, what is this cryptic ass message from Anthony Fantano?
You're
And then
funny.
and then you told me you wanted me to do like some intros. So literally since I've been like 14 years old, I remember going to school the next day telling people who had no clue who you were. I'm like, I'm gonna do a new drop interview. I'm a new drop video. It's like who? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna be a new drop video. So thank you since I was 14 years old for giving me a platform and always rocking with me. And literally I didn't have like a platform at all. So I thank you so much. I really do.
I mean, even before you had anything going like that, like you were making funny videos and you had takes, you had opinions, you were staunch in them, you were clearly passionate about music, and you've been consistently doing that this entire time. It has been cool to see.
One last thing, I always appreciate you liking and commenting on my rap videos when I'm doing the sugar-free type of flow. I appreciate
I
that.
mean, it's like people do need to kind of like realize that I feel like, and this is like obviously no shade to him, because I do like his work as well. But your flow, your delivery, I think is like so fun, so unique. Obviously, this guy's been around for a long time. He's been around for a minute, but like I feel like a lot of people are really hip and really into like Bruiser Wolf's flow right now. And I feel like, there's like some crossover there between like what both you and him are doing. And if only more people could sort of like, see what you do in relation to that and kind of like I feel like there would be more cross appreciation there. More people are like aware of
What?
some of those videos because
I'm
the
stupid.
flows are funny.
I'm stupid. You liked the last video that I did when I was rapping. That was supposed to be on Bruce Wolf album, but I just
Holy
never got it
shit.
mixed. I never got it mixed, so he had to put Trinidad James on there. Place the Trinidad James on all people. So yeah, that was supposed to be a
Dude.
Bruce Wolf album, but I just never got
Dude.
it fixed. That was my fault. That was my fault,
You
though.
got to be on the next one,
Yeah, I
man.
got to. I got to. That was my
You
fault.
got to make sure you're on the next one.
But thank you for always supporting me. That's the moral of the story, and I just want to publicly say that I appreciate that, man.
There was that guy recently who was on the new JID album, the new JID record, and he like tweeted, "Yeah, I recorded my verse on a PlayStation headset, and that's why it sounds like that." So I don't know how you're recording it, but however you do, just get it, because if out here on the JID record you could do it on a PlayStation headset, you could be on the Bruiser Wolf album recording it. However, just make sure you do it.
That's a fact. That's a fact. We'll note it. We'll note that.
There you have it. We are linking to Eric's YouTube channel down below, obviously his Instagram page too. Thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments down below. I know you will. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or a link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, watch the party die forever.